1 2 1 2. I go by the name of DJ What, and you're now listening to the original Jeek podcast. Let's go.
Ready to make an entrance, so backward cut. Come on, cut for me.
Oh yeah. Whoa, slow down. Whoa, speed up.
Fresh.
Yeah, making me itch.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Rocky Mr. Magic, and I am the original Jeek, and you are listening to the original Jeek podcast. I am so glad to be recording here this end of October, and it's just crazy how fast 2022 has rolled on by. The recording date today, you're listening to this, it's going to be Wednesday, but I'm recording this on Monday here, the final week of October. And for those who are familiar with the show and familiar with me, your man Rocky Mr. Magic, I'm not a spooky guy. I'm not a Halloween celebrator. I don't like the spooky stuff. I don't like the jump scares, but I know a lot of you do, and that's okay. So today we're going to talk a little spoopy, and we're going to have a little countdown as far as top 5 list. We're going to talk a little Werewolf by Night, and our main topic this episode is going to be a deep dive discussion on how one would reboot the Bond franchise. Joining me today. I had to have him back and have him soon because we had such a fantastic time just a few episodes ago. Host of the Culture Jacked podcast, the one and only Dustin Poindexter.
Hello, Jeek Nation. How are you? How have you been? I don't know.
And the
like,
resounding
intros are hard for me now.
It's all good. Jeek Nation, as gracefully welcomed your presence to the group, is doing pretty well, as you can see from the tone in our Facebook group. And if you're listening and you're not part of either our Facebook group or our small but growing Discord, check us out in the show notes. There are links to both communities in there. Our Discord community really interacts the most during wrestling pay-per-view times. And there's a whole lot of memes and shenanigans going on in our Facebook group, where you can always get the updates to full episodes as well as clips to the original Jeek podcast and our other show, our wrestling show, the Breaking Ring Rust, hosted by myself and the Cold Heart JT.
You do a second podcast as well?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Strictly pro wrestling.
I can't keep up with one. Like I'm very impressed.
Technically, I do 3, but that one, yeah.
What's the third one?
The third one is I have a Facebook group that is called For Christ for the Culture, and it is an internet space for Black nerds, aka blurs, who are also Christians. And unfortunately, the Christian nerd space is not very minority friendly, and the blurred space is very and not even just Christians, but mainly most people of any faith. It's just a very pro-science, anti-religion space.
Gotcha.
So I created that space for specifically Christians that are also Black nerds, to have a space where we can talk. So we have a book club podcast, and we read particularly either sci-fi or fantasy Black authors. So we've done Kindred by Octavia Butler. That was our first episode, and then our most recent episode was The Book of Phoenix by Nnedi Okorafor, and we are currently reading the follow-up to that, which is what's the name of that book? It's also by Dinetti Okorafor. It is um, something flying.
I'm very familiar. I love that one.
Which is it's a shame. No, wow, I'm terrible. It's called Who Fears Death.
Oh, nice.
Who Fears Death by Dinetti Okorafor. So yeah, we're reading that, and I've got a couple others scheduled for that by
Do you
Dinetti and others.
do you do graphic novels by black artists as well?
I'm thinking we may do graphic novels. The ones that people in the panel were all kind of book snobs. I've bounced
Gotcha.
around doing a comic book slash graphic novel show, but I'm pretty much like waiting for more traction between the shows that I currently do before branching out and starting to produce another show because um, I do some paid editing jobs and such. So like with all the editing I do for fun and some of the editing that I do I get paid for, like I
God,
want
you're
to.
so busy, man. What the hell?
I'm a very busy unemployed person.
3 podcasts. You've got these book clubs, and you're doing like editing on the side. And I've got one podcast, and every time I go to edit it, I'm like, God, I need an assistant. I mean, I don't have the money or the clout or anything for an assistant, but that's too much for me. So I'm very impressed. Mark Bernardin. The reason I bring up graphic novels,
Mhm.
he's the co-host on Kevin Smith's podcast, and
Yeah.
he has recently released a graphic novel. I believe it's Andorra or Adora. I'm not sure what it was, but I was just wondering, like if you would be interested in reading that because I was
Oh no,
just curious about the
I
novel.
definitely
You know,
would be because like there's I have several books from two comic creators that have both been on Jeek Nation programming. My man Greg Bernard, who is the writer, and then Marcus Williams, who is the artist for a series called Tuskegee Airs.
okay, cool.
So if you've never heard that, check that out. And
Let me
and
write it
Greg
down.
also has another book called The Search of Sadika that he kickstarted last year. And I also follow Stranger Comics, and they have, and all their stories are African based. They have a Niobe series called Niobe, which is really dope. And I'm a black comic nerd from the '80s, so I've been reading. So when Milestone came out in the '90s, and dropped Static and Icon and all those, I was a massive fan.
I never read Static Shock, but I watched it on the old was it WB or UPN? I can't remember what it was
It
on.
it was WB Kids.
Yeah, I used to watch Static Shock, but I never read the comic. They're
It's
doing a
so
new
it's
Static
so
Shock, aren't they?
there's talks of doing a new Static. I didn't like Static Shock as the show because Static in the comics was when he was older, and it was more teen adult. When Static Shock came out, I was in my early 20s, and it was too kiddish. So and they they made Virgil more of a kid as a teenager, and I was just like, it was cool seeing him, and it was cool for the for the younger people, but I just didn't enjoy it that much. My older kids loved it, but I just didn't enjoy it that much because it was so different from. Because you had this kid in this jacket, he's got this mask on. Compared to the comic books, you got he's older and he's in all black. He's wearing a Malcolm X cap. Like it was a completely different vibe between the books and the show. But I love the character. I can't wait to see what they do with him in the future.
Who's is it? Michael B. Jordan that's producing that new Static Shock.
I believe he is involved. Yeah,
I think he was either a producer or he was writing it or something. No, I don't think he was writing it. I think he was producing.
I think he's producing, just like he produced for um, another good black comic short in Raising Dion.
I loved Raising Dion. I haven't seen all of it yet. but the kid with superpowers. That's
Yes.
the one you're talking about. Yeah,
Yep.
I watched that one. That was good.
Raising Dion. Sadly, got it didn't get the third season to finish it out, but uh, I enjoyed the season one especially. Season two had had some weak points, which I understand why you know between the pandemic and everything why why it struggled, but uh, good show, better books. But a really, really dope, and Michael B. Jordan helped bring that to life, which was pretty cool. I like to get from you, Dustin. Give me your top 5 movies that scared you. They don't have to be classic horror or anything like that, but movies that legitimately scared you, whether you were a kid or a teen or an adult. What are your top? What are the 5 movies that scared you the most?
All right. So, Matt, I when I got this text from you, I had to really think, because if what I'm gathering from context clues from you, you are not much of a like horror movie or scary movie fanatic, as I am not.
Yeah,
I'm I'm what people would classically call a big wiener. I'm so easily terrified and frightened. I stay away from this stuff. I don't intentionally do it to myself. Um, that is not to say that I have not in the past. So the 5 movies that I got, the first one was Chucky, way back in
okay.
the day.
Yeah.
I don't remember
Child's
which
Play.
Chucky it was because I didn't watch them all, but I watched one, probably out of order. And so I was terrified of my sister's dolls for like a
Okay.
long time. So um some of these had like really lasting impacts outside of the movie, outside of just like the scare of the movie. So Chucky
Hmm.
was one. And
Okay.
there was a movie in, I think it was, maybe 2009, called Splice. Did you ever see Splice?
I never saw, but I have heard of it.
So in Splice, just the quick, $5 recap. Essentially, there were these 2 scientists, this husband-wife team, and they developed a creature using like genetic tomfoolery,
Yes.
and they put together this creature that they used, I think, their human DNA in it at one point, and it made this creature that was like a scorpion or like human with like a tail that poked, and it was trying to figure out what it was,
Hmm.
and eventually, spoiler alert for Splice, the husband became romantically involved in this creature. And so the Splice scared me because they made that creature like sexy and attractive, and it scared me because of the things that it was doing inside of me, and I was like, I shouldn't be attracted to this monstrosity, but I was. So I was horny for the creature in Splice, and that scared me. And then the another old one, Leprechaun, I saw it over at a buddy's house. Warwick Davis and
Yeah.
him doing his leprechaun things. I almost put Critters on my list, but I didn't because again, seeing that as a younger man, I really got horned out when the Critters turned into a Playboy model,
Playboy
and
body. Yeah.
I think it was Critters 2 was that one. And then the last two, The Mummy scared the bejesus out of me, with Brandon Fraser when the beetle like crawled into the guy's skin.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that terrified the heck out of me for a long time. And then my number one is the oldest recollection that I have of a thing that scared me was Jurassic Park. I actually, as a
Okay.
child, I had to leave the theater um, right after. I think it was right when the goat was being fed to the
To the T Rex.
velociraptors.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That, oh man, that scared the heck out of me. And I said, Mom, Dad, I don't like this. We gotta go. And they were like, all right, let's get out of here. And my dad, I remember being upset because he really wanted to see
He really wanted to see the
Jurassic
movie.
Park. Yeah. We went back and we saw it later, but the first showing I was too timid.
Oh wow.
Those
That's
are my top
that's
5.
that's a good list.
Yeah.
I get you on that. That's a good list. But like you, yeah, it's scary. It's just I'm not. Yeah, well, there's a couple things for it. One, I'm not one for scary stuff. Like to me, like if I want to feel something, why would I want to feel scared? I don't
Right.
understand that mindset that some people have. Like I want to go be scared. I'm like, for what? That don't make no sense to me. And then, growing up in a Christian household as a child, my parents, wanted to, shield me from anything, demonic. So I was like, okay, and then culturally, black folk, we don't play with the devil like that. So it was just like,
I don't invite this evil into my house.
Into my home. So like,
sure,
it's like,
sure.
that was double on that. So for me, it was just like, so I had friends who were like, oh, because in the 80s and early 90s, all the Friday 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Streets and everything, and my friends were like, oh, don't you want to see this? Don't you want to see that? And I'm like,
no,
not really. Like there were tons of things I wanted to see, in rebellion to my parents, but horror movies were never something I was like, ooh, I want to see that. Like, nah, bro, I'm good. I'm good on that. So when I eventually did see some of those things, it was on regular TV. So they would show the movie on TV. So obviously a lot of the really hard stuff was edited out. But some of the things that scared me. Now my list is really weird because because like a lot of things just really didn't scare me. Because I was in a very firm Bible believing home, so my parents are drilling me into me as a kid. That the Bible says that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. So I'm like, okay, cool. I don't need to live life scared. So a lot of things that scared other people, they didn't scare me. So the things that did get to me were things that were spiritual or demonic in nature, because I was wary of people who were trying to do that. So like I don't know the name of the movie, and if anyone listening knows the name of this movie, please help me. So I wouldn't have watched it if I wasn't at home. But we went to a family friend's house from our church, and the kids, we were downstairs in the basement watching Disney Channel because they had Disney Channel. My parents were too frugal to pay for the Disney Channel back then, and there was some movie on about this pirate who was dead and escaped from hell, and he was trying to help these people, and every time he tried to help them, sometimes he would jump into their body and possess them, and when he did that, like some evil hell flies would come to try to pick his soul up and take him back to hell because he was supposed to be in hell, and I was just like, for some reason it freaked me out. I was just like, what? It was something pirates. I don't know idea.
I was going to try and help you when you were like, if anyone can help me figure this out. And I was like, oh, I got this, Matt. As soon as you start talking, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to tell you what it is. And I'm thinking, okay, what horror movies do you know? Is it The Omen? Is it The Exorcist? Is it the Annabelle movies? And then you come out of left field with this crazy pirate ghost demon movie.
Some obscure pirate ghost.
That's bizarre.
Movie. It is so bizarre. And I have never even seen it. I even looked for it to see, like, maybe if I was just having a bad dream at a friend's house on Disney Plus to see, like, if this is on. It's got to be so bad it's not even on there. But it freaked me out. So that's always number 5 because I do not know the name of it.
Okay.
So also on that list, so it scared me, and only in that I could see it happening. But even though I found it comedic and a decent thriller, was Scream.
Okay. Yeah. I watched Scream when it came out.
Just the possibility, I was like, I can see this actually happening. So that was like the scary part for me. Scream was. I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is a pretty smart thriller. Okay. Wow, like these people are twisted, and I can see this happening. And that was like so at the end, I'm like, because I laughed through half the thing, because all the horror tropes and everything that they played upon, and I was like, this Wes Craven guy, like his other stuff wouldn't have scared me too much, but this is too close to home. Like
It was good. I mean, it and man, talk about like an iconic horror movie too. Like
absolutely.
it's secured its place in the annals of horror history, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Next on the list for me is a classic, Hitchcock classic, in The Birds.
Oh, the birds. My brother was terrified. He's terrified of all birds. But after he watched that movie, we went through the drive-through at McDonald's and we threw like French fries on the roof of the car, and a bunch of crows and stuff came and they landed on the car. Oh my god, that poor boy! He was so sad. He was so scared. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just had to let you know. Yeah,
no,
that's a good one.
That anecdote is well worth it. That is hilarious.
Yeah, poor boy.
Oh wow. But The Birds was great, and I love it. I mean, it doesn't scare me now because I was a little kid when I saw it. But such a great film, such a master work of a film. And then number two, and only because I was a little kid when I first saw it, and I was very very young. Wrath of Khan scared me, and only in the scene where Khan places the slugs into Chekhov's and Captain Terrell's ears. Just the sight of that and the pulse pounding music, that scared me. That scared the crap out of me as a kid. I was
body horror stuff is crazy, man.
Yeah,
like the ears, the neck, the spine, the brain, into the mouth, into the eyes, wherever. The alien stuff where the alien's in and it's beaten out, all that stuff is so creepy.
That and to that with the number one thing that scared me, and it wasn't supposed to scare me, was that scene that was originally an Alien, but the version from Spaceballs.
Oh, really? With the tap dancing alien? And that was one of your scariest scenes? Okay.
Yeah, because my parents weren't gonna, because my parents weren't gonna let me see Alien, and I was like 6 or 7 when Spaceballs came out.
Okay.
So I didn't understand the reference. I understood, the Star Wars references. I got that, but I hadn't seen Alien. So when that scene happens and this thing just bursts out and then it starts tap dance, it freaks me out.
I can see it.
That scared me. Now, as an adult who have seen Alien and can appreciate for the fantastic film that it is, it's no big deal. But as a kid, and I did not know in the frame of reference, I was just like, because in my mind it's all Star Wars stuff that they're pretty much making fun of. So when they were lampooning other sci-fi references and such, they were going over my head, and so when that happened, it was completely out of left field. I didn't see it coming the way other movie watchers saw that joke coming. So it was just out of nowhere for me. I was just like, ah! That stayed in my head for a good 2 weeks.
So had your younger self seen Alien for the first time before seeing Spaceballs, you would have had the same reaction because it's the same scene, and just because it was Spaceballs was like,
well, see,
different.
But honestly though, I don't even think I would have had the same reaction to the original, and I'll tell you why. My mother always says that she always questions like when I was born, even though obviously she was there, because like I remember one time she came into my room when I was in high school and I was listening to Nat King Cole. And, what high schooler in the 90s is listening to Nat King Cole? And she's like, how old are you, boy? And I'm like, well, you should know. You're the one who birthed me. Like, but, most, 16, 17-year-old kids in the 90s were not listening to music from the 50s. I've always been like an old soul, so to speak. So because I grew up watching Star Trek alongside my mother, I was a lot more pragmatic when it came to these type of things. So if I would have seen, like I would have said, because of all my Star Trek watching, as I'm watching Alien, I'd have been like, there's no way you should let him out of that Why is he eating with everybody when he just had
Right.
an alien off his face? He should be in quarantine. I wouldn't have said quarantine, but I would have said he should still be in sick bay. Like, you
Right.
should not be next to him. You have no idea if it's safe. Like, why are y'all just having lunch like nothing happened? So that wouldn't surprise me because of that lead up. I would have been like, no, Kirk would have had McCoy have him on lock. He'd have been in restraints. Like, he's not walking around the ship all freely having lunch with everybody. That would not have gone down on the Starship Enterprise. So that scene would, and then seeing that happen, I would have been like, yeah, you had that coming. Duh. You should have had this guy in sick bay, under close surveillance. Like, bro, y'all asked for that.
Right.
So, but when Spaceballs did it, they hinted at it, so it just came out completely out of left field for me. But if I had
Right.
seen Alien beforehand, I'd have just been like, y'all stupid. That and half of Alien is that. Half of Alien is, how is Ripley the only person with half a brain on this ship? Like, how
Well,
are you traversing in deep space and y'all don't got no brains but her?
right. The problem with like horror movies and action movies, and I mean like any movies, it's easy for the writing to fall onto the trope of, they're just dumb.
Yeah.
They made a mistake. They split up when they should have stayed together. They shouldn't have gone in that room alone. I think some of the best action movies and horror movies, and I'm blanking on any of them right now that could come to mind, but are ones where the characters would act in a reasonable way, or in a way that you would expect yourself to act to survive, and then still getting got. But that takes a lot more like intentional writing in order to do, I think.
Okay, so we're gonna go down the rabbit hole, as we say on this show, a little bit.
Let's do it.
Especially since you're wearing a Christmas sweater. So we're gonna talk about the greatest Christmas movie of all time, and that is Die Hard.
Okay, agreed.
So Die Hard is a great example of what you said when it comes to intentional writing, and the character is doing what you pretty much would expect or hope in your mind as a hero,
Mhm.
as the protagonist would do in that situation.
Right.
Because he really doesn't make he really doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and when he does make a mistake, he kind of pays for it. He's just fortunate enough to keep ticking and keep going as he's struggling through, this ordeal, trying to survive and free everybody. So there's no, and that's what's great about it. Like, there's nobody dumb in Die Hard, except for the cokehead. There's nobody dumb.
Right.
He's the only one that didn't need. Takagi could have done nothing else to save his life. He did the right thing. Holly could have done nothing different to change the situation. All the other hostages could have done nothing different to change the situation. And John McClane could have done nothing different to change the situation. They did what they had to do. Only Ellis was an idiot, trying to be a hero. And if he'd have been probably not high, he probably could have helped a little, helped a little bit in the situation, by inadvertently running interference instead of trying to think he was so slick that he could, get them out of it by smooth talking, Hans Gruber. So, you don't have that, where Alien, I'm looking at this crew and I'm like, the captain seems to be like, okay, he's maybe kind of smart and Ripley's smart, but everybody else, I'm just like, you're a coward. You're not smart at all. You're out here trying.
You're arrogant.
You're arrogant. Like, and it's like, oh man, like, and again, part of it is just because I watched so much Star Trek. I'm like, I can see those pratfalls coming so so far ahead, where something is written a little stronger, like a Die Hard. You don't see that coming. You're like, okay, this person may die, because despite the fact that they're doing everything they can, it may just still happen to them, and that's a hallmark to me of good storytelling.
Yeah. No, I agree. Now, before we move on, I just wanted to get your opinion, since you brought up Die Hard as a Christmas movie, which mad respect for you for doing that. Is the night
Nightmare.
the night the Nightmare Before Christmas, is that a Halloween movie? Is it a Christmas movie, or is it both?
I would say it's a Halloween movie.
Okay. All right.
It's a Halloween movie that references Christmas.
Okay. I think that makes sense. It's got a lot more like Halloween elements than it does Christmas.
Not even thematically, it's obviously Halloween, and um, the the song that it's most known for is "This Is Halloween." So
This is Halloween. This is
yeah.
that's
So
right. That's right.
mean, it's a Halloween movie, and
Okay.
with some references to Christmas. That's a good
All
question.
right. All right.
Some people would say both, but I lean toward being a Halloween movie. And
My
that
wife
was
says both. I say Halloween. I'm
Let's see.
happy to hear that you say Halloween as well.
We right there. We right there.
We're in sync, man.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go into. We're going to now transition into a review for Werewolf by Night. So if you have not seen Werewolf by Night on Disney Plus, I would encourage you now to press pause on this episode. Go and watch this less than an hour. I mean, because the credits are long, so I'd say it's probably 45 to 50-minute long special on Disney Plus by Marvel Studios. It is absolutely worth watching. So this is a spoiler warning. If you continue to listen past this, that's on you, because we're going to talk spoilers here for Werewolf by Night. So, Dustin, before we go into the spoiler portion, what would you rank Werewolf by Night 1 through 6?
1 through 6 again. That's right. Your scale. I had to remember. I was like, I know it was something different.
1 through 6 scale.
1 through 6. Okay. So Werewolf by Night, it feels so easy to give it a 3. Like that's where I go to naturally.
Okay.
But I think I want to rate it higher than that, just because it's something that we haven't really seen out of the Disney Marvel purview just yet. And so I think I'm gonna rate it. Can I get into decimals? Can I give it a 4.2?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that all right? I'm gonna give it a 4.2 out of 6. How about you?
4.2 out of 6. Okay. I'm actually going to go a little bit higher.
Okay.
I'm going to give it an even 5 out
All
of
right.
6.
Right on.
Because there were some points that, we'll get into it. But there were some points that really, really resonated for me that I thought were really cool. So, for setting this up, listeners, Werewolf by Night is obviously a Marvel property from the 70s, and it's not the most well known. It's kind of a I would say it's got a cult following within the Marvel Comics fandom, and so when I heard at D23 that they were going to do this, I was like, really? Like, okay, that's cool. Unexpected, but I was like, okay, that's cool. But as a comic nerd, it's one of the properties that I personally had pretty much like no extremely little information about.
Okay. Wow.
So I knew of it, but and I knew like the character. I had forgotten the main character's name, and it triggered when I was watching it. I was like, okay, now I remember the name. But outside of that, and also the Bloodstone, I remembered that. But everything else, like, was completely blank, because it just wasn't werewolves and stuff. Just were not something I cared about, growing up.
Right.
So I just, I kind of ignored it. So I didn't watch it initially, but I said to myself, but Friday I was like, you know what? Let me watch this. I'm hearing that it's really good. So I watch it, and I'm just like, this is fantastic.
Right
Um,
on, man.
and so and you know we just spent how much time talking about how we don't like horror things. Um,
Well,
but
it was Marvelized. It was
yes, and
MCU'd.
it's more noir than it is.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and it's more of a noir type horror than horror.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of so one thing I'll say the first, I love the fact that 99% of it's in black and white.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That part, you know, that is, and I know part of it's because I'm old and I grew up watching. The only thing scary I kind of did watch as a kid was Alfred Hitchcock Presents, because I was on Nick at Night. So those late
Sure.
nights when I was on, watching Nick at Night, and midnight would strike and Hitchcock would come on, I would watch it. But there was a lot of Hitchcock themes that Werewolf by Night had that I thought were just freaking awesome.
I bet you also were a fan of Twilight Zone. Don't lie to me.
Not as much as Hitchcock, but yes, I was.
Really?
I was
Okay, all right.
But I was a fan of Twilight Zone. Yeah.
What was the other one? The Outer Limits?
Outer Limits. Yeah.
Outer Limits was there
Limits
too?
is a great mix of sci-fi and and thriller and kind of horror.
Sure.
Yeah, three great shows. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I watched more Hitchcock because it was on Nick at Night, and like my parents knew I was
Gotcha.
watching Nick at Night, so I kind of like, but no, the noir feel was so cool.
It was very nice.
I love the fact that the Bloodstone was always in color. I thought the cast was really cool because it was nobody that like I recognized.
Right.
So like the fact that there was like very little star power
Mm-hmm.
to carry it was, I think, just a fantastic decision by Marvel to really let the story, really carry the
Right.
the presentation. I thought that was super great, and just how everything went was like just it was so good. It was so good.
I'm sure the stars of the show also, like, I know they're known in some capacity. I don't personally know them or know their work, but there is at this point in the game,
Mm-hmm.
Marvel makes stars. Like, they can take an unknown actor and make them a comic book character that's been in the stories for decades, and that person's star power will just through the roof. So
True.
I know there's going to be like, if there's people that listen to your podcast and they're like, what do you mean they're unknown people? Like this guy, he was in all these, this gal, she was in all these. But that, like, to a wide audience,
Right.
I think Marvel has the capacity, at least, to create these sorts of mega stars at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and to your point, Sebastian Stan was not a household name before Marvel. Like he
Right.
was in things and he did things, but
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't a household name. And even Hemsworth, Chris Hemsworth wasn't a household name before Marvel.
And the rebound that Downey did, like, as well, like, he'd come out of rehab and, he'd been in some stuff, but then, like, man, that was his golden ticket. Let's talk about Werewolf by Night. What the heck? Marvel makes stars. I have all these notes.
This is what we were saying. Marvel makes stars. Yes.
Marvel makes stars.
Marvel makes stars. But to your Marvel makes stars point, you're absolutely right, because I think that this guy Gael Garcia Bernal is going to definitely be more recognized after portraying Jack Russell, aka the Werewolf by Night, and the other main talent from this, Laura Donnelly. I'm looking at her IMDb. It's very short. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 films on it, and 4, 5, 6, 15 TV credits on it on Wikipedia, which may not be obviously full, but we're talking 21 total credits to her her filmography, and only things of note I can see are she had one appearance in Outlander, and
Okay.
she did 2 episodes of Merlin back in '09.
Oh wow.
Um,
Haven't thought about that for a while.
yeah, she looks like she was a lead in The Nevers on HBO, which I have not seen or really.
I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, it's a Joss Whedon thing, and Joss Whedon's he's been off
Ooh,
of late.
ooh,
Yeah.
Joss Whedon. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a.
He's a whole other topic.
I haven't heard that name in years.
At least not in a good way in years.
Yeah,
I'm
I
always
know,
since
right?
Firefly, like
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so she's not, she's no big star. He's no big star.
But we have to assume that. I mean, we don't have to. We can do anything. We're human beings, so we have our own capacity, right?
This is true.
We could assume that these characters, whether it's the Elsa Bloodstone, the werewolf, the man thing, I guess I'm spoiling it too much already just by
No.
saying that.
So you're good. We're in the spoiler zone, so it's all good.
Okay, we're in the spoiler zone. You can assume that this was just the introduction to these characters, right? And these characters are going to show up in Blade, and they're going to show up in Punisher, and they're going to show up in the eventual Ghost Rider movie, and then whatever Avengers team up comes down the road, and Secret Wars and all that. Like, these are just their introduction. So at the very least, they're going to be stars within the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I think that's cool because these people are probably going to go on to like bigger and better things post their, or maybe even during their MCU time frame. Because Man Thing is a classic character that definitely should not be discarded, and to introduce them like this and to not use them again would just be silly
Be a
after
crime.
such a really good production.
Yeah. What do you think of the werewolf transformation when he finally turned into the
transition? I have to say that because obviously the Man Thing had a lot of CGI effects and such, but I loved how much they leaned on practical effects within this special, and I think that's part of what made it so good. Was the practical effects, the use of shadows, because sometimes because to me when it comes to something that's horror related, I'm a big believer in the Jaws presentation of things, like show less to show more.
Right.
And
I think that was an Alfred Hitchcock tenet as well, right?
yes,
If you never show the creature can be the worst thing you imagined. And even when you show the creature, yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it's horrible, but it always could have been worse in your imagination.
yes, absolutely. So I thought the transformation was great. I thought they did a very good job building the suspense, and for those who were not familiar with at all with Werewolf by Night, I would think that the revelation that Jack Russell was the going to end up being the real monster that was going to be hunted was a cool twist, especially when he went to pick up the bloodstone and it hurt him and knocked him backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a twist people really probably weren't seeing.
That's me. I didn't know what to expect going into this. I'd never heard of the comic. Only when I saw Man Thing did I realize that these were, characters that I was somewhat familiar with, and in Man Thing exclusively, like the Bloodstone, Papa, Mama, and Baby Girl. Didn't know them. The werewolf character didn't know him. It was completely took me by surprise. I knew it was coming out, but I usually try and read up on the things. I didn't read up on this one. And so I really enjoyed it. Like, I didn't enjoy what he transformed into. Like, I thought he could have been more wolf looking, like Maybe they could have CG'd that up a little bit more.
See, I see. I actually liked it because he looked very much like a classic horror werewolf. In that,
Well, that's true.
and
That's
that's what,
true.
and I liked that about it. And he could have looked like, for example, the what's his name? I can see the character. I can see his face. I forget. From Harry Potter, the professor that turns into a werewolf. Um,
Is it Sirius Black?
no, but he does in a
He's a wolf.
he turns
too
into a wolf,
sometimes.
but
Not a werewolf.
not a werewolf.
If my wife was here, she could tell us automatically. She's a big
I
fan
can
of the
see
franchise.
his face, but I can. He married Nymphadora Tonks, and all that. Like but I can't remember the professors. Let me look. I can look up Nymphadora, and it'll tell me who she's married to. Lupin, Professor. Yes, Professor Lupin.
You're speaking Greek to me right now, man. I know Harry Potter, I know Hagrid, Ron, Hermione, Dumbledore, and that's about. I mean, like Snape and Voldemort, and like the big ones. I know them.
Big ones.
You asking me about extended Harry Potter lore, and I'm not your guy, guaranteed, 100%.
I'm just a stickler for details, but
I could tell.
but I'm not like an expert on Harry Potter, but no. So yeah, Remus Lupin, he's in the third film. He replaced the Kenneth Branagh's character as the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher.
Okay.
And so he played the werewolf, and the way they did his werewolf was just obviously a lot more wolf-like, but it just in my mind, a werewolf should truly look more like a mix of half human, half wolf than looking more wolf than man. So the way they did this in Werewolf by Night, I thought was pretty cool because he looked very classic-y, but classic werewolfy, and he also had still a strong man resemblance, which I think is, to me at least, is key in that he was telling her, whatever her name is,
Elsa, right?
Elsa. Yes, he's telling Elsa. He's like, I need to remember you. So he's like sniffing her.
I loved that. That was so good. When he just started like sniffing her, he's like, I got to get your scent.
Yeah.
I got to remember you because when I turn, all bets are off, like
Yeah,
that was that was such a good detail.
Yes. And so I was like, and to me, that's really cool because that human part needs to kind of be there to, to latch onto. And in contrast to like a Professor Lupin, where nothing could like stop him when he was in werewolf mode, it didn't matter if he knew who you are or remembered you or not. Like he was completely in beast mode. But to me, werewolf mode would be kind of like how Hulk is, where primarily the Hulk part's in control, but underneath the surface there, the Banner part is also kind of aware and trying to fight to the surface. So I thought it was well designed and gave you a good looking werewolf with a classic vibe to it.
Right. So did you have any expectation going into Werewolf by Night of Blade showing up?
I did not. And only because I know how the production has not gone well for Blade. And
right, with the director
and such. And also, Marvel, Kevin Feige's been doing a great job with overlying as far as leaving breadcrumbs. And Blade showing up would be too much of a, here, look at this, compared to leaving breadcrumbs. Boom. Right. That's a big reveal.
Yeah, it is.
So I think that's too big a reveal to me to be if Werewolf by Night was a 10 episode show and on episode 10 you reveal Blade, okay, that's different. But in a 55-minute special, you leave breadcrumbs. instead of big reveals, in my opinion.
Okay.
But it would have been cool to hear like a reference or something like that, or maybe Blade's sword is hanging on the wall somewhere. Maybe they reference him or kind of mentions, I know, or if you said, hey, I know a particular hunter who hunts during the day and at night, or something like that. Kind of,
Little
that would
name
have been
drop.
cool, right? Yeah.
I wonder if there were any, because I don't know the source material very well. I wonder if there were any like references or Easter eggs in any of the mounts that were on the wall from the previous hunts.
I would imagine there are. And
There's gotta be, right?
There's gotta be, and that I mean, I was thinking I need to go back and read those 70 comics anyway, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and there's gotta be monsters on there from previous comics, or yeah, it would. You don't show those things generally without some type of purpose. So
Right. There usually is. I also enjoyed the campiness of it, like when the dude's arm got lopped off,
yes,
and it was very, like you said, very noir, very classic horror movie, almost like a visual radio show, with the
yes,
arm getting chopped off like behind the door so they could do the prosthetic. There was no like fancy modern cinematography tricks to
yep,
at least that scene. I mean, and besides like maybe the magic of the bloodstone and man thing, I mean, really there wasn't a lot that was done, like you said, outside of practical effects anyway.
yeah, exactly. And then to me, that's one of the things that made it just work so well.
Made it special.
Yes, absolutely made it very special. And this is something that like um, I can have my kids watch, and I know they're not going to be freaked out. You know,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and that part's really cool because it's so story driven and it's not horror driven. It's not fear driven. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you as you get into other characters in the MCU that are typically more violent characters or scarier characters, whether you're talking Blade or Ghost Rider or you're talking, Daredevil, Punisher, they're definitely going to MCU eyes, or make MCU these characters like how they did Daredevil and She-Hulk. Like
Right.
he's definitely the same kind of violent street, beat 'em up kind of guy, but it's not going to be as, bloody or violent. And you can still, it's an action sequence like any other
Right.
in the MCU, but it still captured the characterization of Matt Murdock's vigilante identity. I don't know. I'm excited to see how they do Punisher and Ghost Rider and Blade.
I am as well. And being that you mentioned Matt Murdock, I actually really liked how they did the action with him because
Yeah.
it was very different than how the Netflix series was,
Mm-hmm.
which was more rooted in more real style, realer combat. This one was a lot more superhero-y,
Yep.
which was fun and obviously fit the fun aspect of She-Hulk more than the super dark and serious tone that was Netflix's Daredevil series. So I think the future with Daredevil is going to look really, really cool
Yeah.
as they go on.
Well, and besides, that's. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and besides, that one's like 18 episodes long or something. Like his series, they said it was going to be a real long one.
Yeah, it's going to be real long.
I'm excited about that.
I no, I am too. Like it should be fantastic. And Charlie Cox is just he's won everybody's hearts as Matt Murdock. He is just he's freaking great, and I can't wait to see Vincent D'Onofrio back with him as
Mm-hmm.
Kingpin. Like because they had great on-screen chemistry between the two of them.
Yeah, I still haven't seen the third season of Daredevil, or I think the third season of Punisher on Netflix, but it's on my list. Like everything,
Oh,
I got,
man.
I got lists on lists.
Yeah, and all, my list keep growing. My kids keep adding anime to my list, and I'm just
What anime have they added to your list? I'm curious to know. What are the kids into these days?
so when I got home this afternoon, they were watching Spy Family,
I've heard it's
and
so good.
I heard
I need
it's
to watch it.
so good. Um, I
Have you
I'm
watched Ranking of Kings?
I had that's on my list too.
Oh, good, good, good. I'm just glad it's on your list. Take your time, take your time. But I want to hear what you think about it when you finally watch it.
Yeah, my anime list is long. I had barely started Attack on Titan, and my friends have been getting on me about not watching that. Um, so I've got Attack on Titan to watch. I've got Spy Family. I am so far behind on My Hero Academia. It's not even funny. Um,
You can skip that. That's fine.
I watched the first season, and like my kids were watching with me, and one weekend my wife was doing their hair, and when you're doing hair, you're sitting there for an entire weekend, so they just binged it, and so they're like 4 seasons ahead of me, and I'm just like,
Thanks, guys.
yeah, exactly. Um, so uh, yeah, I'm behind on that, and then there's another one I'm forgetting. I have an actual list. Like there's an app I have where I add all the recommendations that people give me for animes. It's called Animations, and I actually got to reach out to that. I actually had scheduled the creators of the app to come on the show, but we kind of lost touch. But that's where I put all my anime recommendations that people give me, so I can have an actual list of them, so I know what I need to watch next. So I will let you
You
know.
don't need any more recommendations from me. So when you find yourself empty though, talk to me if you want one. I'm not going to be one of these guys though, or one of these kids that like gives you a recommendation and is like, "Hey man, watch it. Why haven't you watched it? You should have watched it. Did you watch it last week? Are you going to watch it tomorrow? Are you going to watch it the day after that?" There's something that sucks the joy out of a thing.
when you
And that
pepper
is
when you
just
pester somebody about it,
it's like it I don't need another obligation in my
right?
life. I have plenty of obligations.
Too
Um,
many.
I appreciate the recommendation, but let it sit at that. And I will enjoy it at my own pace if I enjoy
Yes.
it at all. Because otherwise, it's just another chore. And you
Right,
don't
and
want another
and, and
chore.
and if you want me to do a chore, then you need to pay me to do the chore.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a job at this
It's a
point.
job at that point. It's like if you're gonna make
Yep.
it a chore, then give me $20 for my time. I'll watch it and I'll write a review on it or I'll do a video on it. But like if you want to recommend something to me for me to enjoy, then let me enjoy it at my own pace. So I've just recently binge watched Ted Lasso
I've
after
heard it was really good.
everyone telling me for people telling me not everyone but a lot of people telling me for a long time this is really good, you gotta watch it, and I'm just like eh, okay. And after I binge watched For All Mankind with the wife, and she hadn't seen it and I got her to watch and we binge watched it, I was like, you know what, let me check out this Ted Lasso that everyone says is so good, and it was really good. But I was able to watch it on my own time, and I didn't have anybody pester me. Hey, did you watch it yet? And I have a friend who does that way too much. I love him, but he's always like, "Hey, did you check this out yet? Did you do that? Did you watch it?" I'm like, "Bro, when I can, like, I got other things going on. Like, I do watch a lot of stuff, but I got other stuff to watch, and I got other things going on. I can't. I haven't. I haven't watched Rings of Power yet. I'm behind. I
You get behind on things. It's fine.
I'm choosing I'm choosing House of Dragon over Rings of Power right now. House of
That's your
Dragon.
medieval fantasy.
Yeah, I don't even have a medieval fantasy.
What?
I
You just
don't.
got modern day fantasies.
Well, I if I had to pick one, I would probably pick the the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, only because if I lived in one of the free cities, life could be pretty good. Um, at least better than in Westeros. Um, you know,
As a person of color, like a medieval fantasy or a lot of historical fantasy, it's not real great, is it?
it's not great at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least in that world, if I live in Pentos or I live in Ashai or Mir or something like that, I have a pretty decent shot at having a good life. Where
Right.
if I live in Westeros, it all sucks, and if I live in Middle Earth, I don't exist pretty much at all.
Well, I
So
mean, yeah, there's black elves now, and so they exist. They're just, man, there's a lot of people that are really angry about them, and
right,
that's just
but those
that's
people
just how
should be
it goes.
happy because by the time we get to the Lord of the Rings, that's already been produced. Apparently, they all died off. So all the black elves and black dwarves and black hobbits apparently all
I
died
didn't
off.
even think
So
of that.
yeah,
Jesus,
and
somehow,
and that
mysteriously,
and that was my thing.
damn.
That was one of my knocks um, to what, well, let's call, for lack of a better term, the diversity casting that
Sure.
these people are so upset about. My thing is that, well, are you going to redo the Lord of the Rings then? Because now you've made it look like the humans, the hobbits, the dwarves, and the elves all had some massive,
Yeah,
genocide events here and just killed off all the dark people because there are
they were
none.
bred out or killed out. Yeah.
Yeah, because there
That's
are
yeah.
none in those films,
Uh,
or
and
in the
maybe that
Hobbit film.
speaks to my privilege, but I didn't even consider that the black elves and the black hobbits had been genocided or gotten rid of in the future episodes.
Yeah, because
Um,
if someone watches from the beginning, then as far as story wise, if they start with Rings of
chronologically,
Power
yep.
chronologically, they'll be like, okay, and then they'll watch Lord of the Rings, or they'll watch The Hobbit, and then watch Lord of the Rings, and they're like, well, what happened to all these dark people? They're all gone.
They were there
They
5,000
they were
years
there
ago,
five
but
thousand years ago, but now they're no more. Like, and that's a
oh,
darker tale
jeez.
that you. So it's like this is, yeah, yeah. That's one of those things where, like, I'm like, I know they're complaining because they just don't want to see dark people on TV, but
Correct.
but for me, I'm just like, I didn't.
There's
There's diversity. I don't, I'm good for seeing in certain properties, and there's others where I'm
mhm,
like, I don't care. And the Lord of the Rings is one of those ones where I don't care. It's,
right.
you know it doesn't matter to me. Um, for especially for how, the like, especially because there were times, and more like in the 80s and 90s, but there were times where, black folk, we'd be watching, television movies and stuff, and we're like, it'd have been cool if there had been somebody black in this. And then there's other things where we're like, I'm glad ain't nobody black in this, because these people are acting the fool, and they can keep that. Like, I'm glad we wasn't out acting the fool, like Jersey Shore as an example. Like, I'm glad there were no black people in Jersey Shore. Okay, there's certain properties where I'm like, yeah, that was not for us. You're not going to find us in, for that one. And a lot of scary movies, honestly, we're talking about the spoopy things. There's a reason why you didn't see a whole lot of black folk in scary movies, because we ain't gonna go exploring in no haunted house, and we ain't about
So
to have,
canonically,
yeah. Culturally, we're not gonna have no, go to no party out in the middle of the woods. No, that's not what we do. We've heard enough stories about too many of our ancestors going out there and never coming back. Uh, like, we're not doing that. Y'all want to go inside and look around? Cool. We're not doing that. You know why? Because that's called breaking and entering, and they're not gonna call our parents and let us go. We're gonna have to go to the jail. So y'all want to go break and enter all you want? Y'all go ahead and do that. We're gonna
listen,
go.
we don't get off as easy as Robert Downey Jr.
Exactly. We're like, especially because it's like, hey, everybody, let's go to the drive-in. And as you drive, as you're heading there, oh, look, let's go in that spooky house. Nah, we'll meet you at the drive-in. We'll save some seats. We'll save a spot for you. We'll get popcorn. Y'all come back, when you come back. You know, we'll meet you there. We're not, no. And
You see, Matt, go ahead.
and then like I played a lot of sports through my life, and I know on the professional level, most most pro athletes, especially in the super athletic sports, football, basketball, a lot of the athletes are black. But I played with my fair share of white athletes, and y'all are not that uncoordinated. I don't understand why y'all are always falling and stumbling over things in horror movies, because black folk, we turn into track stars when stuff goes down. We're sprinting, we're gone. We are not we're not hanging around for nobody. We're out. Stuff goes down and we are gone. And all of a sudden, all these, especially these white women, are falling all over the place. And I'm like, how are you that uncoordinated? And if they're that uncoordinated, how are they never like? How does it take this monster, Jason or Michael Myers, 2 hours to get to somebody to kill him when they're always tripping over, rocks or chairs? Like, there's a chair right there. How do you not see that? Run around it, jump over it, something. But how are you running right into this chair and tripping and falling and then looking back to see if you're still? Why are you looking back? Someone's chasing you. Why are you looking back? Don't get me.
There's a great commercial.
No sense.
I can't remember what the commercial was for, but it was, I don't know, like car insurance or something. And they were talking about how easy it was. And so they were making comparisons to like running from a murderer in a horror movie.
Uh-huh.
And they were like, we're in the car. We should start the car and go. And he's like, no. We should get out of the car and we should go hide under all of those chainsaws hanging under the shed over there or something like that. But I guess that goes back to the bad writing. And as far as representation in modern media go, I think, again, just like last time, is another good topic that we could have a pretty long and good discussion about as well. But as a person who's always felt represented in film, or not really, not even that, because I never like cognitively put together that these people look like me. These are just people. And so I never had there was never any gap for me, and there's been a couple of moments like real recently too. Like whenever Wonder Woman came out, was that 2017 or 2016 or something? A few years ago, because we'd had all these superhero movies with the MCU blowing up and the X-Men and everything else, all male-led movies, and Wonder Woman hit. And I remember seeing a little girl talking to Gal Gadot, and she was dressed up as Wonder Woman, and she was just so excited to have a superhero that looked like her, that was like her. And I've experienced that same kind of like sympathetic response recently with all the hubbub about Ariel in the new Little Mermaid being black, and seeing just video after video on TikTok of these little girls that are just beside themselves because the Little Mermaid looks like them. And so I don't even know where I was going with this, but like seeing that kind of representation for other people makes me realize, like, yeah, all of these movies have been about you, Dustin, this whole time. And so I can't know what that feels like to finally see some good sets of representation. And they're bound to get it wrong occasionally for the sake of diversity. But I think it's a good thing to run the risk of getting it wrong, trying to do maybe the right thing,
Yeah, I mean, and I would say in general, black folk in general are cognizant of that, and we're forgiving to a certain extent on that. There are certain times where it's done where we're like, okay, like
it's very pandering, eye roll,
really pandering, really eye roll. Like you didn't even try to, like, you can tell. Like, okay, I'll give you a really good example. So, and this is just my opinion. I haven't talked to anybody black about this one yet, but the Resident Evil Netflix show. Okay,
I haven't seen it yet.
Don't bother. It's
it's bad, huh?
horrible.
It's worse than the movies?
It makes the movies look like masterpieces. It's so bad.
Really?
Lance Reddick is the only saving grace, and then there's one really cool gun fu scene with this fat dude, which made me as a fat dude feel really good at this fat dude doing some really cool.
I got a gut too, man. We don't see enough representation. Speaking of represented
for real.
peoples in the industry, come on, let's get some people
we
that
were
are out of
talking
shape.
about that. We need some fat dudes as love interests, and we need some fat action stars. They're not going to run much, but we need some fat action stars. And
they're going to be comfortable to sleep on. That's
yeah,
good for a zombie movie.
Exactly. And the woman that we save, she's gonna be comfortable laying on our chest because we're nice and cuddly.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, we need some more of that. But the so the Resident Evil show takes place in the future, past Raccoon City, in a new Raccoon City, and they have Wesker is played by Lance Reddick, so they swapped races on him. But Lance Reddick is amazing. But they had two girls play his daughters, and the one girl is black and the other girl is like, I think she's Asian. But the black daughter, the way she spoke, the way she, I could tell it was not written with black people in mind, with a black girl in mind. Just because in the average black household, you can't cuss at your parents like that, especially if you want to live.
Right.
I'm like, I was watching this. I'm like, there's no way this was written with a black person in mind. And a black person did not write this character because a young black girl, even in today's average black family, which is a lot more lenient than when I was a kid and in previous generations. You're not talking to your father like that. You're not, it's not happening. And I'm looking at it like, there's only so far that my suspension of disbelief can go. And when I was, and especially when it comes to a lot of cultural things, like there will be times where I see, an Asian character is really being disrespectful to their parents. I'm like, yeah, they have no idea what the context of an Asian household really is.
Right.
Like, and that takes me out of the element, because it's like, if you're gonna put, when you're gonna do some diversity that's based on reality, you need to actually know a little bit something about that culture so you can properly portray it. Which is why Crazy Rich Asians, for example, was such a success, and I heard so many positive things about it from different groups within the Asian community, because it was very accurate to a lot of Asian culture and how families are and what the pressure is for marriage and the pressure is for success, and how the stress of that makes them, a lot of them react, and how they approach things. I've heard almost nothing negative about it, because the people who wrote it, it's their culture. They know the culture. So for certain things, so like Resident Evil show, it was just like this person. This was not a black character at first, second, or final draft.
It was just a tokenized version.
It was a token. Like, oh, let's throw somebody black in here and it'll work out, and it didn't. And there's certain changes like that people those race swap certain characters, and some characters you can do it with, like you mentioned the Little Mermaid, the big hubbub about that. You can race swap the Little Mermaid because, one, mermaids aren't real, and
Right.
two, the mermaid culture lore is not tied to race in any way. So what the experiences of the fictional experiences of Ariel is not going to be impacted by the color of her skin. Where if you race swap someone, we're going to talk with something we're going to go into ahead, we're going to transition to this. Someone like James Bond. Race swapping James Bond causes a problem because his Scottish identity is a very central part to that character in his upbringing, in his childhood, and into his life in his part of Her Majesty's Secret Service. So if you make someone who's unfortunately too old to play him, like Idris Elba tried to cast as James Bond, it doesn't work in that aspect because his Scottish identity as a white man is very essential to the character. And swapping him out, in my personal opinion, with anybody of any other ethnicity is just lazy. That's lazy writing. To me, the way you reboot the Bond franchise is you take it from being the Bond franchise and you turn it into the MI6 universe. And you introduce two more primary spies. You can introduce a female spy and you call her, I don't know, something British, Mary
Jane
Smith. Not Jane.
Jane Band.
No, not Jane. But you call her like Mary Smith, something basic. And then
Sure.
If you want to have a black guy, she can be 008, and then you get a black guy, which can be Idris or anybody, but probably somebody younger because you want this person to play the character for a while. And you get a 009, and his name is Alistair Jones. And Alistair Jones is 009. Mary Smith is 008. James Bond is still 007. Again, these are designations. So you can, and to me, the best thing is you keep your constant, and James Bond is 007, but you use the other 00s because again, that's a designation. He's not 007. His designation is 007, and you can cycle in different characters into these 00 roles, or if you want to expand and have two more cornerstones, and then 004, 003, or 0010 or whatever are other throwaways that you throw in and out. Cool. But you should be cycling in more people, more characters into the MI6 universe focused around Bond, and then maybe have two other cornerstone characters. And I think that would help the franchise more because now you're not leaning solely upon the James Bond character, and you're not draining these James Bond actors. Because that's like one thing that almost all of them have agreed on is that it's such a demanding role to do.
Right.
They want so much out of you. Well, if you have an MI6 universe, then James Bond, whoever's cast James Bond, doesn't feel like he has to do 10 films. Maybe he does 5, and then you do 2 films around Alistair Smith, and you do 2 films around Alistair Jones, and then Mary Smith has her couple films, and then you have your Avengers style movie that focuses on the entire agency where Bond and Smith and Jones all make their appearances and work together, and you see these 00s working together and saving the world from the latest evil villain who's got some crazy nanobots that are going to kill off all of the bees, and that's going to disrupt the ecosystem or whatever their insanely specific heinous plan happens to be.
So Idris Elba is who we're talking about, right? The rumors that were going on about him becoming James Bond. And, you've got a better perspective into this being a person of color. And maybe that's why maybe my perspective is less informed. However, I just don't have a problem with race swapping, with gender swapping, unless, like you said, it affects that person's character. So like a James Bond that becomes a Jane Bond, perhaps a woman is recast as Bond 007. What are the main tenets of a Bond that wouldn't allow her to be a her? Maybe she couldn't be a womanizer, or maybe she could. Maybe she took a bunch of men to bed. So, well, maybe it's not the version of the character that I want. Because, like, I'll give you an example
to address that. So
sure.
Now, I say this because I'm someone who's seen pretty much every Bond movie.
I have not.
Even the George Lazenby, like I've seen pretty much every Bond movie.
I started with what's his name?
Pierce Bronson.
Goldeneye.
Yeah, Pierce
That's
Bronson.
the one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Mhm.
So I started with Connery, and to me, Connery's my favorite.
Ooh.
Connery's the best. Not the greatest when it comes to the action, but no one was smoother. Nobody
Sure.
was smoother than Connery. Connery was just so smooth. So Connery, to me, Pierce Bronson's the second best though.
Okay.
Then Roger Moore, then Daniel Craig, then Timothy Dalton, and then last and be last because he only had the one film.
So you're more informed on this whole Bond conversation from your perspective and from your knowledge of the thing.
Because I dive deep into stories. So, and the Bond films, it would be one thing if they were all one-offs, but the overall arcing story is tied together. So, Bond was married, and people try to be like, oh well, it's different people because the actors change, and that's the way to say it's different people. Well, they went from Roger Moore to Dalton, and they continued the story of him being married as Dalton, came back, visited the grave as Dalton. Like it's a continuous story. It's one dude. So there's a lot of events that make Bond who he is that changing it would differ, and this is some of the basics of Bond. So one thing about Bond is that he's very cold, he's very disconnected, and it may sound stereotypical, but genetically the average woman is a lot more emotional and is not one to be as cold and distant and disconnected as James Bond as a character is.
Okay.
It's just what it is. There are also one example I will say, and also I think the Bond franchise as a whole has done very good job as far as making things more diverse and more inclusionary when it comes to more women in race, and then and I think they did a great job in gender swapping M. Because there was nothing about M's character or story that required M to be a man. So when they had Dame Judi Dench become M, I thought it was a fantastic move. In my opinion, she's the best M we've seen portrayed on screen. She did a fantastic job. You believe she was in charge. She portrayed clearly that she was in charge, and Dame Dench has that that charisma. She's got that presence.
Gravitas.
Yes, she's got that gravitas where like she's in the room and she's in charge.
Right.
And you felt that. So that was absolutely fantastic. And you felt that between the two Bonds that she's had, between Bronson and Daniel Craig. So I mean, that was a fantastic gender swap. And it didn't change the character. They did add an additional character during the Brosnan years, which was the black dude. I forget what his name is, but they added him as a character that was cool. And even though I wasn't the biggest fan of it, when they used Naomi Harris and as the new Moneypenny in the Daniel Craig movies, there's nothing that, at least from my knowledge and what I've read of Bond novels and what I've watched in the Bond films, that really changes the story for Moneypenny by making her a black woman instead of her being a white woman still. So that was a swap. Like I wasn't asking for it, but it didn't change really anything, at least to my knowledge, story-wise, for having Moneypenny being a black woman. So you've had a lot of that change within Bond already. Within other characters that I think they did a great job with. I personally just think changing Bond himself would be too much of a separation that would be believable from the already 50 plus years of established history in that story for all of a sudden for it to be a woman. Because I don't think the average woman would behave in or react in those same ways than the way a man would. And also a man of color in England is going to react and have a different experience than a white Scotsman would have in what the James Bond's upbringing and such was.
I gotcha. I, and like I said, I'm not as intimate with the Bond franchise, and so, like I said, to me, it just
And for you
as long as
and your level of experience is the
right,
average. Yours is the average one. I know I'm coming from a place of a lot more intimate knowledge than the average person who is an average moviegoer has for the Bond franchise.
right. It just these are the things that I want from my James Bond.
Okay,
I
I'm
want
excited
I
to hear
want
this.
him or her to be
Okay,
debonair. I want them to be
absolutely.
suave. I want them to be cool and calculating. And if the Daniel Craig version of Bond is any indication, I want them to be real capable when it comes to their action. I want them to be able to duck and dodge and dive and dip and weave and dodge. And I want them to be able to
They need to look
use
like they can handle
gadgets.
themselves. Yeah,
Yep. I want them to have a pin that explodes and a ring that's a grappling hook. And I want them to have jetpack shoes and machine guns that come out of their headlights. I want them to have connections all over the world. And so just when again, the layman, think of
hmm
a James Bond, I think of one that encompasses those things.
yes,
And historically, yes, James Bond is a pasty white guy. And so when I close my eyes and I imagine a James Bond, that's what I imagine as well. But that thing to me is at the bottom of my list. All
hmm
those other things I need to have in a James Bond. I wanted to bring an example that I had from uh, Marvel and X-Men.
okay,
And you probably know there's been all these rumors of a Giancarlo Esposito being cast as Professor X.
right.
Um, and that's not the example I wanted, though. Even though, I mean, an argument could be made for a Holocaust victim that is also a person of color, because, that's some of the people Hitler cleared out as well, right?
Absolutely.
Uh, but moreover, my obsession with Wolverine. Now, I'm a short fella. I,
Okay.
I'm 5'5" on a good day, and I Wolverine Logan he's a short, stocky guy in
Yes.
the comic books, in the movies. He's an ugly guy. That's why his romancing of Jean Grey and his battle with Scott was always so tense, because he was just kind of the underdog. He was like a grumpy old guy.
Yeah.
And so when when Hugh Jackman was cast as a very tall, very beautiful man
Uh-huh.
as Wolverine, I was like, "Hey man, wait a minute. Where's my representation as the short ugly dude from the comics?" And now I realize that in my desperation to do so, I'm also the where's my white James Bond guy, but for Wolverine. And so now I have to like reframe my thinking as well, because yes, Wolverine is a short, ugly guy, but what made him Wolverine? What made him Logan? He's a grumpy asshole.
Yes.
He, pardon my language.
That's
I
okay.
don't want I don't want to tag you with all these explicit content ratings every time I join your show. But he's grumpy. He's an outsider. He's an anti-authoritarian, anti-authority kind of guy.
hmm
Um, and ideally they give me some representation as a short ugly bastard as well, but
hmm
if they don't, those aren't the things that are most important to Logan. And I know all kinds of people have all kinds of different opinions on um, swapping of characters from maybe already established lore and also precedent set in other media,
hmm
uh, but for me, as long as they get the character right, I think that's the most important thing, at least from my perspective.
I hear you. It's a it's a slippery precipice that you have to balance
Right, right,
to
right.
to do it, because for me personally, I think the wisest move is if you're going to me that I should put it this way. I think if you're going to do race or gender swapping, the best way to do it is by taking good characters that either are not super established, um, or as their character just really isn't rooted in who they are racially or as or their gender. But my personal preference is just to introduce existing or not very popular existing characters or create new characters that are of different races, creeds, colors, etc., etc. Um, to me, that's my preferred method. Um, only in that because people are people, and people get very testy when you change something, even if it's not an important change. When you change something little, um, most of the time people don't like it, especially if it's something that's very popular. If you take something that wasn't
Right.
super popular and you make a change, um, most casual people, because that's who these these studios are aiming for, is a casual person. They're not
Mhm.
looking for the sticklers like me. They don't care about me because they know they're going to get my money probably anyway.
I think they
It's
do care about you a little bit. I think
maybe a little bit. Maybe Kevin Feige does a little more than the average, but
that's the one that I'm thinking of. Yep.
the average doesn't care. And I'll give you an example. So
Okay.
Wild West. Okay, everyone knows the movie was terrible, um,
I
but
liked it.
it had its fun.
I don't have
parts.
good taste either, though, Matt. You know that.
I mean, it had its fun part. Look, I own it, so I'm not going to
Okay,
talk
okay,
down
all
on you
right.
because I own the movie because I'm a big Will Smith fan.
Okay.
But anybody that watched the original show knows that Jim West was white in the show, but there really weren't many complaints. One, I guess, because it was the late 90s, early 2000s, but there really weren't many complaints about Will Smith playing Jim West because Jim West wasn't this beloved character, or this super popular, wide character that everyone liked and looked to. So
Right.
no one really cared that you changed race and changed the backstory of Jim West completely to have Will Smith play the character. So, and even though the movie wasn't that great, it did breathe new life into the Wild West franchise, Wild West franchise. So if you take a character that doesn't have a lot going for it, a lot of steam behind it, and it's not going to really mess with the character's story that much, you can get away with a race swap, a gender swap, or palette swap in that aspect, and it will work to a certain extent. Um, so that and I get that writers have deadlines and they're not always trying to create new characters all the time, but in my personal opinion, there are so many characters that are cool out there that you can use and that are existing that you could bring forth and make super popular. That and Marvel has proven that with the fact that Doctor Strange is now a household name, when Doctor Strange in the
Right.
comics was a C-level character. Ant-Man, the fact that we're gonna have 3 Ant-Man movies, like no one cares about freaking Ant-Man.
Guardians.
Guardians were even like Ant-Man was at least like a C level because he was an Avenger and a lot of history with the original Ant-Man, and then Scott Lang as Ant-Man. At least there was a lot of history there, but no one cared about the Guardians of the freaking Galaxy. They weren't
No
even
way.
they weren't on anybody's radar. And then I was like, a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, like who's gonna watch that? I'm not gonna watch it. And then I watched it and it was great. And now there are all these Guardians fans that are it's only been like 7 years or something like that, and but now the books are popular. Now those characters are popular. People want to see those characters in more books, and so you breathe life into that. Black Panther really wasn't a super popular character outside of the Black community and big Avengers fans. A lot of people had no idea he was a character. Um, I remember even growing up, it took me for years to know that Black Panther was black because most of the time he wasn't out of his mask.
Right.
I thought it was a white dude in a Black Panther costume. And they really didn't, in a lot of the Avengers books, they really didn't talk about him being the king of Wakanda. So all I knew was, dude called Black Panther, he beats people up and he's an Avenger. And then I think after years of reading old Avengers comics that my uncles passed out to me that I was like, oh wait, he's black. Oh, because he was hitting on Sue Storm, and I was like, oh, okay, brother, okay. But he wasn't a super popular character or wide. He wasn't a mainstream guy. He wasn't being talked about in the Spider-Mans, the Captain Americas. Even Iron Man had declined as far as popularity, and
Sure.
those films, caused a resurgence for that character. So, with the formula that Marvel has done, you can't tell me you can't take a dope character like Blue Marvel and bring him to the big screen and turn him into a mainstream character. You can't tell me, and I'm so glad that we saw Monica Rambeau in WandaVision, because that's my Captain Marvel. Because she was Captain Marvel
Okay.
before Carol Danvers was Captain Marvel.
Okay.
That's my Captain Marvel. And the fact that I'm going to see her probably as Spectrum more in the Marvels, I can't wait for that. And Tiana Taylor, I think her last name is, she did great in WandaVision, and I can't wait to see her more as Monica Rambeau. And the fact that we got some more Maria Rambeau in Spider-Man, not Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was super dope.
Yep.
So, like, there are so many other. I would love to see Night Thrasher from the New Warriors. I'd like to see all the New Warriors. I would love to see Rocket Racer. That's my guy. Like, there's so many male, so many black characters, Asian characters. Shang-Chi was such a huge success.
That was so good.
It's such a good film. And I don't even like Awkwafina, but she did great in the movie. She wasn't like annoying Awkwafina in that movie. She can be annoying, but
the
she was
martial
really
arts
good.
and the choreography in that flick were the best that I've seen in a Marvel property yet. And
So
like
good.
that's what I wanted out of Iron Fist, but
But we got
didn't
Finn
get it.
Jones, who clearly can't fight, and and the thing is, the choreography was great for everybody, but he just couldn't pull it off. And
Right.
and then he got beat up every episode while in the midst of saying how he's the immortal Iron Fist. I'm like, no, you're not, because you get beat up every episode, bruh. And you're getting beat up by
where's your
regular
powers?
dudes. Yeah, like regular dudes are.
You never
beating you
turn
up.
that shit on. Turn it on. You're the Iron Fist. Use the Iron Fist. Gosh dang it.
Oh, that drove me nuts to no end. I want to see everybody back but Finn Jones, and I'm sorry, Finn. And there's a reason why they didn't have him show any fight scenes with him in Game of Thrones, because he clearly cannot do fight scenes.
No. Well, I heard there were like he didn't show up for rehearsal and he didn't go to all the practice he needed to do. Like he was very lackluster about it. Didn't take it serious. And you can tell like when there's an actor or a director or someone that's not a fan of the source material.
Yeah.
Like when these people dive into it, like Charlie Cox.
Yes.
Huge fan. Anthony Mackie, huge fan. Like these guys, they dive into the source material. They love the characters they're portraying. They love the universe they're in. But then you can tell people that are like, yeah, comics are cool. It's like,
yeah,
come on.
Do you really think that though? Yeah.
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 Come on.
And just, Finn did not look committed. And look, I'm not a Kristen Ritter fan, and I didn't think she was a good cast for Jessica Jones, but you can't tell me that she wasn't all in and doing the best she could portraying Jessica Jones. I thought that was good. I thought she was. I didn't think she was a good cast, and she and Mike Coulter have zero chemistry. And I thought that, like, in the press pictures, I'm like, these two do not look like they could be a couple. They just look so awkward together. And when they had their love scenes, I'm like, this is bad. I've never seen a couple lose so much chemistry from the little bit that they had until, like, I thought Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss had a tough time maintaining their chemistry in Matrix, but man,
Nothing compared to those two.
Nothing compared to Kristen Ritter and Mike Coulter. They just did not fit, and that's one of, like, current Marvel's favorite couplings is Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, and those two just they don't work. But I'd rather see them as a couple than see Finn Jones as Iron Fist ever again. I don't.
Amen.
I want to see everybody. I want Madame Gao back. Obviously, I want Kingpin back. I want the woman they got to play what's her name? uh, the Asian girl. I forget her name. I can't believe I'm blanking right now. But
In Iron Fist,
in Iron Fist, yeah.
his love interest.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't remember who that is.
Yeah, I forget her name. I shouldn't because she's a great character. Colleen Wing.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Colleen Wing. Colleen Wing's great, and she also dated Cyclops for a short period of time. Because Cyclops is a big hoe.
He is a big hoe. He doesn't deserve Jean. Let Logan have her.
Well,
Come
Logan
on.
didn't deserve her either, but Cyclops is a big hoe. Cyclops, Daredevil, and Spider-Man are like the biggest hoes in all of Marvel. Like they have so many women, it's not even funny.
Dude, I'm so glad that he and Jen Walters hooked up like that. Like I was like, this is comic books right here. I love it. We got the super serious one,
and him doing the walk of shame afterwards was hilarious.
So good.
That was so funny.
And you know what's great about that scene though too is not just the walk of shame and how funny and perfectly timed it was and how comedically it was written. One of the great things about that scene too is just like how it makes superheroes and vigilantes a normal part of that world. Like the lady he walked by didn't even blink an eye. Like it was just like this is what the world is.
Yeah, there's a guy in
a red
in yellow devil costume. He's walking with his shoes in his hands. Yeah, no big deal. But you got to remember in this world, somewhere in the Arctic Ocean or something like that, there's just a massive head and hand coming out of the water. It's just chilling, There's
part of it.
There's a frozen celestial just in the water. Yeah, just
and
everybody,
everybody
half the population blipped. Yeah, no big deal. Like.
I love that they build those things into the universe, and I wish they'd get back to them sooner because I want to see like after effects and repercussions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The one that bothers me the most is Guardians of the Galaxy 2, when Ego was like eating all of the planets there at the end, and like the blob stuff was coming out of the KFC or Dairy Queen or whatever it was.
Right.
And like they never brought it up again. It's like what's going on with this ooze? Like there's got to be a news report or something. Come on.
And they could have, in all that world, and they could have hinted at Galactus, but that was another missed opportunity.
Yeah, that's going to be Phase 9 or something.
Something like that. But let me ask you this: because of what you want out of Bond, who would you cast as Bond to be Bond for the next 10 years or something like that? Because that's what they say is going to be required of whoever they cast.
Gosh, I don't even know. I did see, and it's such a like cliche pick, but I was scrolling through the TikTok before our podcast this morning, and I watched a video of some dude who like does Photoshop and ages up actors or ages them down or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a picture of Tom Holland, and he took the picture of Tom Holland and he gave him some creases under the eyes, and he made his nose a little longer, his earlobes a little longer, kind of put some wrinkles around his mouth, widened his jaw, stretched out his neck a little bit, gave him a little bit longer hair.
Mm-hmm.
And they made a Tom Holland in 20 years. So not a current day Tom Holland, but that Tom Holland in 20 years looked like a very debonair guy. And
okay.
I could see a 20 years from now, Tom Holland playing a James Bond character. And I think he's got the acting chops for it as well. Right now, he's just a child in everything that he does.
Because he looks like a child.
He looks like a child. I mean, he did pretty good in Cherry. That was a pretty adult role. But I think a 20-year Tom Holland. I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head. I'm sorry, Matt. I failed you. I failed you in this.
Well, let me ask you to react to this. Because if I was casting James Bond right now, there's only one name I would call. He has the look, he's got the body, he can act, and he's young enough to carry the role for at least 10 years. And that is the Superman and Henry Cavill.
I'm down for it, man. I think Henry Cavill's cast Henry Cavill in everything, man. That guy's awesome. He's such a nerd too. I love it.
Well, that's because he was a fat kid.
Oh, was he?
Yes, he was on.
He's compensated for that well.
Yes, he was on Graham Norton, And Norton was interviewing them, him and all the other cast, and he said, "When you were in secondary school or whatever, didn't they have a nickname for you?" He's like, "Yes, they called me Fat Cavill." Uh, he went through school.
Dang.
He went through most of his schooling as Fat Cavill, and you look at him and you can't imagine an ounce of fat on this man, let alone having the nickname of Fat Cavill. But so yeah, he had a humble beginning, so that nerd him and that personality was allowed to develop because he wasn't some heartthrob, growing up. But that guy, I mean, he's talented. He's got the look. And when I remember when they cast him as Superman, I'm like, a British dude is Superman? I don't know. But then I saw him, I'm like, this dude looks like he stepped out of a comic book. Like, are you kidding me? Like, yeah, clearly this guy is Superman.
He nailed the Superman physique
that.
For sure.
And in a suit, yeah, you can't tell me this guy can't be James Bond. He would be a fantastic Bond in my opinion, and he would combine what you want: a good-looking, debonair, action-capable guy, and and will not look super goofy with all the the gadgets and toys and such. I think Cavill would be the premier pick to be James Bond.
I can't argue with that. I mean, if 20-year old from now, 20-year in the future, Tom Holland's not available, of course.
Right. But I think he'll have a baby face till he's like 60. So I don't know.
He probably will. The guy that aged him up made it very convincing.
Tom Holland and Zendaya are like in their mid-20s, and they both still play like 15-year-olds because they just perpetually look like children.
So you'd asked me before we came in, like, what I would want out of a Bond franchise. Yes. I just want to get these couple suggestions off the ground before you have to go. You'd mentioned it, but I also think a Bond universe would be really great. Like,
absolutely.
There's so many opportunities to do spinoffs of any of the characters that he's hanging out with, established, or like you said, maybe a couple, 008, 009 characters within the universe. Amazon.
You didn't notice that I made the black guy, the 009, the little entendre there?
Very nice. Very nice. Did you ever see Cyborg 009?
No.
Oh, it's so good. It's an anime. I'm not recommending it. Don't put it on your list because there's other ones I want on your list before that.
Okay.
It's an older anime. So the Bond universe with the packing 00.
Yes.
Also, I thought would be cool. Surely you're familiar with the Batman Beyond animated series.
Yes.
I think a show or a movie around an older Bond character who's done his spying, he's done with the international super spy work, and he is raising or mentoring a younger spy. I thought that would be kind of a cool take on the character, and one that I haven't seen.
That would be really interesting, only just in the fact that spies generally don't live to retirement age. So somehow, right. Somehow Bond lives to retirement age. Like, that could be really, really cool. And just, how he passes along knowledge or deals with not being able to go out in the field and take care of things himself.
And it wouldn't even have to be Bond, really. Like, it could be an M character. It could be another character that he's worked with, regaling him of Bond's exploits.
But more of a mentor, mentee type of show. Yeah, or movie. Yeah, that would be
cool.
And
he's going out, and now he's doing missions, and he's coming back, and he's like, you bonehead, what were you thinking? You could have done the mission this way or whatever else. So I thought that would be cool. And then the last thing that I thought would be, I know, like, all Bond is like, it's not sci-fi per se, but there's like cool technology and there's a bunch of like interesting gadgets and stuff like that. But like a Bond in like a futuristic sci-fi setting, like proper, whether it's flying cars or it's, a city above the clouds or whatever, what have you. I think a sci-fi Bond would be an interesting take, although it'd be maybe hard to mesh them up. But you've seen Altered Carbon, right?
Yes, I have.
So like they had that in Altered Carbon with the metas or whatever they called themselves in the sky, where they're all like rich people and they're all dressed to the nines. And I think there could be an opportunity to have like a sci-fi Bond as well. Those were my things that I wanted
That's
to
an
bring up.
interesting thought. I never considered putting Bond into the future, or how spycraft would look as far as more sci-fi, or into like 20 year 20 year 2200s. Like that would be really interesting. But I kind of got a glimpse of that in Star Trek Discovery, where they introduced the black version, black shirt guys with Starfleet, who were like the Starfleet spy network. And I thought that was kind of cool. So in that type of futuristic world, you're gonna have some type of spies to do your reconnaissance work and all types of stuff. So yeah, that would be a really interesting take. Like wow, okay, you've got my mind churning now.
Just roll it around a little, see how
Yeah,
it feels.
yeah, I'm gonna have to kick that around a bit more. Yeah, okay. Well, now we have more for another return episode on top of the recommendations.
Good. Keep writing them down. I gotta kind of stoke the fires just so you'll invite me back.
Just a little bit. Got to kick the tires and light the fires a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Well, I think we both want pretty much the same out of the Bond universe. I'm just hoping they actually, hear this and listen, because to me, like if I am, the people who owns the right to, Broccoli's creation in Bond, or I think it's still MGM who still has the rights.
Which is Amazon now, right?
Yeah, I think, which is Amazon now.
Yeah.
To me, it's just that's just more money I can make. Like, if I expand the universe, I'm just giving myself more opportunity to make more money and give people more depth into something that they've been asking for more depth into. Because if you change Bond too much, then those Bond classic people are going to be upset, and they're going to take a certain amount of people away from the film if you change Bond too much. I'm not a big fan of Bond's womanizing as a character, but it's a part of the character, and if you strip that away, you're losing part of the fallacies of the character that make the character feel real. But if you introduce more characters who have their own different fault sets and their own quirks, then you can continue to build on that spy network and that spy franchise, and it doesn't just have to be solely dependent upon Bond. And obviously, you can use more stars, and everybody loves, in my opinion at least, everybody should love a good conglomerate. Um, you know, uh, the band gets to the other movie. Um, the Avengers showed us that it works, and even though they aren't nearly as good as the Avengers movies, tons of people watched Justice League. People demanded the Snyder Cut, and tons of people watched the Snyder Cut. They want to see those characters together. So if you make new characters and you build them up within that same universe, they want to see those characters together. And all you're doing is just giving yourself, you're pretty much printing money. Like, I don't understand why if you create a universe, why would you not do it? George R. Martin showed you can do it, because he hasn't even finished the Song of Ice and Fire, and he's doing all the prequels and all this stuff, and he's making tons of money, even though all I want him to do is finish the books. But part of me can't be mad, because he's getting paid doing all this other stuff and all these prequels,
Right.
and it's a license for him to print money, because people are continue to ask for more and more and more. So, like, why? Can you imagine how limited it would be if he focused on nothing but the Starks? If he didn't have all this Targaryen lore to go off of and all the lore of Old Valyria, like, if it was just all Starks, I'm sorry, as much as I like a lot of the Stark characters, it'd be pretty dull and boring.
Oops, all Starks.
Yeah, oops, all Starks, all direwolves, like. But I don't understand why they would limit themselves. So I truly hope that the Bond reboot will expand upon the universe, because You need to, because honestly, when Bond's in in Casino Royale in the early scenes where he's in Africa, I'm like, well, duh, there's the spy. The spies, the only two white dudes following the dude around in I forget what country they were in, but like they're the only ones running around the Congo. I wonder, and they're clearly out there talking amongst people in British accents. I wonder what the Brits are doing here, especially. And they were at that mongoose versus cobra fighting pit. Yeah, yeah, that's not a tourist spot. You're blending real good in there, guy. Like, and I've always felt that way about like sure if the white guy is a spy and he goes to like a fancy hotel or a diplomat meeting or something like that or a business thing, sure he can blend in. But you're telling this British spy who's white as snow is supposed to blend in amongst the people in Africa or in Thailand or in any other place where unless it's Europe or the United States. No, he's not just blending in. He's not going to go to Peru and just blend in. He's not going to go to Brazil and just blend in. Like, and that's why Bond is always either pretty much in Europe or in the pretty much in Europe because that's the only place he blends in. Because when he's in Hong Kong, he don't blend in anywhere, and when he's in Africa, he don't blend in anywhere. Like, duh. Oh, can you see the spy? Right there. And they keep looking at the wrist and touching their ears. Oh, I wonder who's the spy. Like, come on.
Speaking of speaking as a former spy, I can't tell you for who, but
okay.
I got to let you know that a big part of having any successful spy network is having informants in the area that you go to. So you're not on the ground. You're not the guy on the street.
Yeah.
You've got your guy in Peru, in Bangkok. You've got your guy over there wherever that you maybe don't blend in. So you can have your secrets told to you that way. And
exactly.
But it's not starring the informant. It's starring Mr. James 007 Bond himself.
Yeah, as he drives around Cuba all the time, like he's blending in somewhere. I'm like, give me a break. Like, but that was to me that's a good way of bringing in the other people's characters. So like in GoldenEye, they start off with Sean Bean as 006, Alex Trevelyan, and they're on a mission together, and they're on a mission, in Russia or whatever. That worked. And it's believable because that the two of them will be on a mission together, and short period of time, then 006 goes, and in a future one, the 006 can go do their own thing in their own other movie, but you had that part, you use part of that network. So next time Bond goes to Cuba, maybe 009 is there, and he was able to do more, on the ground thing because he blends in. And he speaks the language, which Bond hasn't spoken a word of Spanish. Yet he's always somehow ends up in Latin America, but he can't speak the language. But so you have 009 there, and he speaks the language, and he blends in because he can be a dark Cuban or a dark Dominican or Puerto Rican or whatever. Or if it's something involving, like I just watched Miss Congeniality last night with the family.
Nice.
Benjamin Bratt couldn't have gone undercover at that pageant. No, you need a woman because there's only certain places a woman can go. And so you have your woman informant that can go in there and they can go behind scenes in there, or they can pose as, as a certain type of, streetwalker or as a madam or a showgirl or whatever they need to do to get access. And that's another way to introduce that character and have them go do their own spin-off thing. And it's just, and it's to me, it's just, it allows you to build that universe, expand it, and you can have Bond do more because he's using his network. And those people, and you could have that person appear more, so they don't have to star in a movie, but they can appear in the movie and continue to establish the Bond presence. But then a Bond appears a little bit in that movie, a couple scenes here, then they go, and the other one appears a couple scenes and they go, and you're just making more movies. And I just don't know anybody who likes those types of movies. That's like, hey, I don't want more movies. To me, to me, John Wick should be doing this. John Wick should be building upon that Assassin's universe because, and one, I was late to the John Wick party, and I'm about to start a small series on movies and franchises I was late to. So I just watched it this year. It's 2022, and I'm super late to the John Wick party. But like I hope that they expound more into that assassins society, their currency, the hotel, and the rules and the whole nine. Like I want them to go so much deeper beyond John Wick in that, but you can still focus around him. But there's so much more to that world that they could be fleshing out. That why wouldn't you not want to continue watch more of that universe? Like it seems super freaking cool. So like
That
I hope they do that with Bond.
John Wick, a universe in the John Wick universe, would make a bomb anime series.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh man, you could do so much cool stuff with anime. Get someone like Madhouse or Studio Trigger to animate it.
Yeah.
So good.
You know what? All right, so I'm gonna close with this because it's definitely not a rabbit hole. But I've said for years that I want it to happen, and I might just have to write it myself. But a John Wick university anime, you know what that would be like? An existing anime.
Okay.
It would be like Gunslinger Girl.
Okay. It would be. It would be as they're raised to be assassins. Yeah, for sure.
Which I would love to see a live action version of Gunslinger Girl. So I may just have to take it upon myself to write that.
Get to pinning it. I'll edit it for you. You send it my way. I'll put some notes on it.
I appreciate it because I said that before somebody and they said no one wants to see little girls killing people. And I said, did you watch Logan? Because there was a little girl killing a lot of people and everybody loved it. So I think we're going to be okay if we have a thing centered around teenage girls shooting people up. I think people are going to like it.
I think so. I will.
I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, well, as long as we like it, we know it's a good film. So
I think we, along with the rest of the Jeek Nation, would enjoy that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And Jeek Nation, I want to know from you all, especially if you're listening on Spotify, there will be a Q&A part on Spotify with this question on what would you like to see in the Bond franchise reboot. So I want to thank all of you Jeeks for continuing to listen to the original Jeek podcast. I want to thank my guest, Dustin Poindexter of Culture Jacked Podcast. If you are not subscribed to the show, definitely subscribe to it. Check it out. He is going to start releasing more and new content. Listen to the old content, him and some episodes solo, as well as with his partner, Anthony. Great stuff. I listened to a couple of their episodes where they just had a fantastic time talking about some really great Marvel stuff and superhero stuff. So trust me, it's a well worth listen.
Thanks, man.
You're very welcome. You can find Culture Jacked on, I know, Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify, which is where I listen to it. You can also find the original Jeek podcast on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Castbox, and others. And if you can't find the show on those, let us know, or on your favorite podcasting app of choice. Send us an email at jeeknation@gmail.com or message us on Facebook directly at Jeek Nation. And until next time, peace.
Ready to make an entrance, so backward cut. Come on, cut for me.
Oh, yeah. Whoa, slow down. Whoa, speed up.
This is DJ What, and you're listening to the original Jeek podcast.